In 1943, the United States Supreme Court handed down a ruling that changed history. But the man it vindicated had died just months before, alone and broke in a New York hotel room. Before radio, the ocean was silence. A ship could sail over the horizon and vanish entirely, and no one on shore could do a thing about it. News traveled at the speed of a horse or a steamship. The telegraph worked on land, but at sea, you were completely on your own. In 1865, a Scottish physicist named James Clerk Maxwell published equations, predicting something remarkable in visible waves of energy traveling through the air at the speed of light. Most scientists considered it elegant theory. Maxwell died in 1879 without ever seeing his prediction proven. In 1887, a German physicist named Heinrich Hertz built a simple sparking apparatus in his laboratory and detected electromagnetic waves traveling across the room. When a student asked about practical applications, Hertz reportedly said the discovery was of no use whatsoever. He was spectacularly wrong. Nikola Tesla had arrived in America in 1884, a young electrical genius who worked briefly for Thomas Edison before striking out on his own. By 1893, Tesla was demonstrating wireless transmission of electrical signals in public lectures, describing a full system for sending messages through the air without wires. Meanwhile, in a villa outside Bologna, a 20-year-old Italian named Guglielmo Marconi was reading about Hertz's experiments. He became obsessed with a single question: could this send messages? Working in his attic through 1894 and 95, Marconi built transmitters and receivers and pushed the signal further, first across the room, then across the garden, then across a field. By late 1895, Marconi had transmitted a signal 2 kilometers across the hills of his family estate. He wrote to the Italian government for support. They said no. Marconi sailed to England in 1896. The British Post Office was very interested. He filed the world's first patent for a radio communication system that year. Back in America, Tesla filed his own radio patents in 1897. The U.S. Patent Office granted them, and for a time, Tesla held the foundational American patents on the technology. Marconi kept pushing the limits, across the English Channel in 1899. Then, in December 1901, something almost no one thought was physically possible. From a station in Cornwall, England, Marconi transmitted a signal, the Morse code letter S, 3 dots, and received it in Newfoundland, Canada. 3,000 miles. Wireless. Newspapers called it a miracle. Marconi became internationally famous. In 1909, he shared the Nobel Prize in Physics. Tesla was furious. He believed Marconi had built his transatlantic system using Tesla's patented inventions without credit or payment. The legal battle began, and it would last for decades. At 11:40 p.m. on April 14, 1912, RMS Titanic struck an iceberg in the North Atlantic. The wireless operator tapped out a distress call, CQD, then SOS. The Carpathia received the signal and turned immediately toward the wreck. By the time she arrived, roughly 700 people were still alive. They survived because of radio. Without that wireless set, every soul on the Titanic would almost certainly have been lost at sea. The world finally understood what radio was actually for. The Radio Act of 1912 made it mandatory for ships to carry wireless equipment and maintain round-the-clock operators. The maritime world was transformed overnight. When America entered World War I in 1917, the government seized all radio patents. Marconi's, Tesla's, everyone's, pooled them together and ordered manufacturers to cooperate. After the war, the Radio Corporation of America, RCA, was formed in 1919 to consolidate American wireless dominance. The commercial radio era was about to begin. On November 2, 1920, a Pittsburgh station called KDKA broadcast the results of the Harding-Cox presidential election live. It is widely considered the first commercial radio broadcast in history. Within 2 years, hundreds of stations had launched across America. Families gathered around wooden receivers in their living rooms to hear news, music, and comedy carried invisibly through the air. Sales of radio sets exploded. By the mid-1920s, radio had become the dominant mass medium in the United States, bigger than newspapers for breaking live news. But there was one place you couldn't take radio: the road. Early car radios were bulky, expensive, and prone to interference from the car's own ignition. In 1930, an entrepreneur named Paul Galvin introduced a commercially viable car radio. He called it the Motorola, a fusion of motor and the ola suffix common to audio brands of the era. It cost about $110, roughly a third of the price of a new Ford, an audacious luxury, and it worked. Within a few years, automakers began offering car radios as factory options. A new daily ritual was born: the morning commute with the radio on. By the 1940s and 50s, radio had become the nervous system of American daily life. News, sports, soap operas, music, and presidential addresses all riding the airwaves. On June 21, 1943, 5 months after Nikola Tesla died alone in room 3327 of the New Yorker Hotel, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that Tesla's radio patents predated Marconi's. Tesla had spent his final years in poverty, his reputation eclipsed by Edison and Marconi. He never heard the ruling that called him what he had always insisted he was: an inventor of radio. History is never tidy. Marconi crossed the Atlantic, built the business, and saved the Titanic survivors. Both men belong in this story. Through the second half of the 20th century, radio kept adapting. FM broadcasting offered higher fidelity. Talk radio dominated commutes. Satellite and internet radio followed. Through every disruption, the car radio held its ground. Today, virtually every vehicle sold on Earth comes equipped with some form of radio receiver. In 1997, a game called Grand Theft Auto put you behind the wheel of a stolen car in a fictional city, and it gave you a radio. As the series evolved, so did the fiction. By Grand Theft Auto, San Andreas in 2004, players could flip through more than a dozen full radio stations. Grand Theft Auto 5, released in 2013, featured radio so rich and culturally specific, with fictional DJs, real licensed music, and satirical commercials, that critics reviewed it as a cultural artifact in itself. The radio in GTA is not incidental. It tells you who these characters are, what city you're in, what era you're living through. It is world-building by frequency. Rockstar understood what Maxwell predicted and Tesla and Marconi built. That broadcasting a voice into a moving vehicle doesn't just deliver content, it creates a sense of place. From Maxwell's equations in 1865, to Hertz's spark, to Tesla's lectures, to Marconi's attic, to the Titanic's distress call, to KDKA, to Galvin's Motorola, to the Lowe's Santos airwaves. Every step in that chain rests on one idea: that invisible energy, traveling at the speed of light, can carry human meaning from one place to another. You probably listened to the radio this morning, in your car, on your phone, or inside a game. The technology has changed. The impulse hasn't. Somewhere right now, a transmitter is pushing a voice up into the air, and someone is receiving it without thinking about the miracle that requires. This is Origins, Subscribe and come back tomorrow. There's a new origin every single morning.